has been an actual case where there was a scheme to register dead voters as Democrats in Florida. Investigators, and this was on the 1st of November. This came out before the election, right? So this is something that has previously happened. But they uncovered an attempt to register dozens of dead people as Democratic voters. Again, just if you're trying to persuade me that this was just a mistake or something, then I've got to ask, why is it always the Democrats? Why?
So let's review this. Official stop scheme to register dead voters as Democrats. Investigators in South Florida have uncovered an attempt to register dozens of dead people as Democratic voters, though no mail-in ballots were requested or cast under the falsified IDs. If anything, it's almost as if Trump kept saying that voter fraud was super easy, and a Republican decided to try to register dead people under the name of Democrats in order to test that theory. And guess what? It was quickly caught. I mean, that's just speculation. Please, let me do this one thing. This guy has been speculating for the last 30 minutes. I just want to speculate one time, okay?
Always the Democrats. It appears that someone attempted to fraudulently register deceased residents. Fortunately, the system we have in place works. Improper registrations were flagged in a timely manner and information was turned over to law enforcement for prosecution. Bravo. We are pleased to inform you that there was no attempt by this person or persons to cast a ballot. Good. So they failed to do this. But that's something that the officials have passed to the law enforcement, and presumably that's going to be investigated, and whoever tried that is going to find themselves facing legal punishment. You get people like Fleccas, who the internet has collated what they think is 10,000 people that they have confirmed.
So before this guy made the 10,000 dead people ballot list, there was another list made for 14,000 people. The claim is that there's 14,000+ people in Wayne County, Detroit. Attempting to discredit election results in a battleground state, a number of social media posts shared this week make the claim that thousands of voters in Michigan had cast a ballot under the names of deceased people. Here's a list of 14,000+ dead people who voted in Wayne County, Detroit, reads a Facebook post from the liberal list that directs to an invalid link. The page asks users to verify it by doing a search of the names on the Michigan Voter Information Center. In a message to USA Today, the liberal list said that the link was to a database list of dead people you could put in yourself, but that link was removed by Facebook. The claim caused some speculation and controversy in the comment section. Some users wrote that the list contains registered voters, but it doesn't mean they actually voted. Another user wrote, every American should be checking their dead relatives. So, the result of the investigation, many voters on the list are old but still alive. The link that the user claimed to be evidence is no longer available. The site reads that it had been expired, removed by its creators, or removed by one of the Pastebin staff. However, while the link was still live, PolitiFact found that the voters listed were over the age of 100, but several were not marked in Michigan's Voter Information Center, and not all were Wayne County residents. One of the alleged dead voters listed, Emo Oliver of Ypsilanti, is still alive, according to PolitiFact. She said she suffered from memory loss, but that her son helped her to vote in the 2020 election. So it's just an old person that... Jesus. This is so sketchy. But okay, let's not taint this next guy's claim. Fleccas. Fleccas. Here's a list of 10,000 people. Let's see. This doesn't mean they all voted. It only means their absentee ballots were returned. Hopefully Detroit. Okay, so these are people who are registered but supposedly dead. There's 10,000 of them. It doesn't mean that they voted. Okay, let's look at the list. Okay, there's a bunch of names. How do we figure out they're dead? Social Security Administration, SSA death information. We provide the Department of Commerce's National Technical Information Service, a public file of death information, which excludes state death departments. NTIS sells the public file of death information. Wait. So, I'm not going to pay money to try to debunk this guy's Twitter post. But there is a New York Times post that I will read. And hopefully there's some insight onto this guy's claims. Okay. Austin Fletcher, a former Ivy League football player turned right-wing internet journalist, said in videos posted to Twitter that he had discovered registration documents on a state of Michigan website that showed 4 people with reported birth dates from 1900 to 1902 had submitted absentee ballots ahead of Tuesday's election. How long has this been going on, he asked. By Thursday morning, Mr. Fletcher's videos were the talk of the Republican internet. Why is it taking regular Americans to expose this level of obvious corruption? Said Candace Odens, a conservative commentator, sharing one of the videos to her 2.7 million Twitter followers. Yet a few phone calls by Mr. Fletcher would have revealed evidence that indicates that what appeared to be voter fraud were run-of-the-mill clerical errors. In one case, a 74-year-old woman in Hamlin Township, Michigan, had asked for an absentee ballot for the first time in years, setting off a notice that the state's digital voter rolls that her date was not on file. According to Catherine Lewis, the town's clerk, the system had assigned the woman a default birth rate of 010101, or January 1st, 1901. Miss Lewis said she knew the woman. Hamlin Township, a rural community on Lake Michigan, has just 3.4 thousand people. She said she had driven to the woman's home and collected a copy of her driver's license so she could vote by mail, but Miss Lewis had not gotten around to updating her file. Rest assured, Miss Lewis said, she's a legal voter. I feel so bad for these small towns getting national attention because people who do half-assed work are calling out, just random normal people. Then, on Thursday morning, after a marathon week for Miss Lewis running the town's vote, her phone began ringing. I have had 18 calls and at least 20 strange emails asking me if I committed voter fraud. Imagine being this poor woman having a bunch of weirdos emailing and calling her because they think she committed voter fraud. Okay, she must be feeling terrible. I shouldn't be laughing at this. She was staying at home with her family. I need to be concerned about my family's welfare, she said. In a text message on Friday, Mr. Fletcher, who goes by the pseudonym Fleccas online, said he was about to publish evidence that thousands of ballots in Michigan had been submitted under the names of dead people. He declined to speak on the phone. Who is requesting, filling out, and returning these ballots, he said in his message. How many got through? That's my question. Since the polls closed on Tuesday, a number of internet sleuths have widely disseminated what they said was evidence that showed Democrats were trying to steal the election. In virtually every case so far, mainstream journalists have found the claims to be false or the product of typical errors in the election process. Yet many people have not heard the truth behind the claims they are sharing, or if they have dismissed it. Social media has created echo chambers where people hear largely from like-minded voices, and President Trump's years of attacks on the media have caused many of his supporters to distrust journalists. As a result, the result is growing belief among some Americans that the 2020 election has been undermined by widespread fraud, a view sharply amplified by the president, despite virtually no evidence. What's that saying? A lie gets halfway around the world by the time the truth gets its pants on, says Matt Makowiak, a Texas Republican consultant who inadvertently spurred false voter fraud claims on Wednesday. Mr. Makowiak posted screenshots of an election map on Twitter that appeared to show that Joseph Biden Jr. has received 100% of newly counted votes in an updated vote count in Michigan early Wednesday. Like Mr. Fletcher's dead voter video, Mr. McAweek's screenshot swiftly went viral. Conservative websites posted stories with headlines like, "Very odd, Michigan found over 100,000 ballots and every single one has Joe Biden's name on it." About 2 hours later, Mr. Trump shared the images and on Twitter with a caption, "What is this all about?" By the time Mr. McAweek had seen people suggesting that the numbers he highlighted were the result of an error that has been fixed, he deleted his original tweet and wrote a new post clarifying the suspicious numbers were not the result of fraud. Look, see? They're not fraud. This is the guy, the original poster, the OP, the op. They're not fraud. The New York Times found that Mr. Biden did not receive any of the votes in question, and that the mix-up was the result of a typo in a small Michigan county that was caught and corrected in about 30 minutes. Still, Mr. McAweek's image continued to rocket around the internet. They were ultimately shared hundreds of thousands of times on Twitter. His correction, it had been shared 3,600 times as of Friday. "I certainly wasn't intending to make a typo appear fraudulent." I need to stop saying this guy's name. I hate pronouncing it. "My worst fears going into the election was that half the country would see the result as illegitimate." A day later, after the claims connected Mr. M's images had been widely debunked by news organizations. Mr. Trump spent 17 minutes behind the lectern in the White House briefing room, claiming without evidence that Democrats were trying to steal the election. One of his specific suggestions of evidence was a claim that a tranche of votes from Michigan all had the name Biden on them. Immediately after Mr. Trump's news conference, William Bennett, who was Secretary of Education under President Ronald Reagan, was asked on Fox News about possible voter fraud. "If there is evidence, I believe there will be, it should come forward," he said. He offered only one potential example of such fraud: large batches of votes with not a single one for Donald Trump. In the case of Mr. Fletcher's dead voters claims, the three other names in Michigan that he highlighted also appeared to be votes cast by living eligible voters. Amanda Kirkpatrick, the clerk of Jackson County, Michigan, said a resident there who had appeared in one of Mr. Fletcher's videos was an eligible voter who had cast her ballot, but the state's voter rolls had an incorrect birth date for her. Ms. Kirkpatrick said her office had contacted the woman, checked her identification, and updated her birth date. There was a similar story in Detroit, where the two other examples in Mr. Fletcher's video matched eligible voters with identical names and zip codes there. The city appeared to have mistakenly recorded the vote of William T. Bradley under his dead father. Okay, we already went through this. In the fourth case, there was another eligible Detroit voter with an identical name and zip code as the person named in Mr. Fletcher's video. The person could not be reached. The Detroit clerk did not respond to the request for comment. Mr. Fletcher's dead voter claims were shared hundreds of thousands of times on Twitter, reaching millions of people. On Thursday morning, the Michigan Department of State tweeted its response. "Fact check. Ballots of deceased voters are not counted," it said. "On rare occasions, a ballot received for a living voter may be recorded in a way that makes it appear as if the voter is dead, such as someone with an incorrect birth date or a son being mistaken for his father with the same name," the statement added. "In such scenarios, no one ineligible has actually voted. There is no impact on the outcome of the election." Mr. Fletcher doubled down. He shared an image on Twitter of 4 urns with the Biden-Harris and "I voted" stickers. Hours later, he uploaded a new video to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram of him walking through his findings again. In the video, he read the statement from Michigan's officials. Maybe Michigan caught some. I hope they did. But how many didn't get filtered through in the process and actually made it through and counted? That's such an odd sentence. He said, "Maybe all of these people voted for Joe Biden." So, I don't trust this guy. I don't trust his 10,000 confirmed whatever. I'm not going to pay money to fact check him, but it seems like all of his other claims have made him not credible. I mean, if a professional journalist or a professional news organization made mistakes like this, you wouldn't trust them either, would you? So I don't trust some guy on Twitter.
Ceased that requested and returned absentee ballots in Wayne County. Are these all clerical errors too? Well, if they voted for Biden, they are. And Rudy Giuliani tweeting out at least 21,000 dead people on Pennsylvania voter rolls. Wow, that's really weird. I mean, just more red flags. It's just, I feel like I'm in a field of red flags at the moment. But it's not just that the dead of... Joe Biden has a veritable army of...
So far, the only red flags this guy has been able to post that I haven't refuted are just memes of skeletons and just memes. They're just memes. Okay, no, 21,000 people in Pennsylvania did not vote. On Friday, a viral claim that Pennsylvania had 21,000 dead people on its voter rolls spread across the internet. In some versions, the rumor, those deceased people had voted for the Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden. Breitbart News, a right-wing publication, wrote an article about it. Others then cited it as evidence that Democrats were trying to steal the election. Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's personal lawyer, shared the article on Twitter, collecting 74,800 likes and shares. Diamond and Silk, the popular pro-Trump social media duo, posted about the rumor on Facebook, and Representative Matt Gaetz, a Florida Republican, tweeted, "The dead vote appears to have swung overwhelmingly for Joe Biden." Altogether, Facebook posts about the rumor reached up to 11.3 million people, according to an analysis of the New York Times. The problem, it wasn't true that 21,000 dead people had voted in Pennsylvania. The claim stemmed from a lawsuit that was amended on Thursday, and an action that fueled the rumor's spread on Friday. The Conservative Public Interest Legal Foundation had filed the lawsuit against Pennsylvania's Secretary of State, Kathy Boockvar, on October 15th in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. The suit accuses Ms. Boockvar, a Democrat, of improperly including 21,206 supposedly deceased Pennsylvanians on voter rolls. The group asked for an injunction to stop the dead people from voting in the election. On October 20th, the court's Chief Justice, John E. Jones III, who has the case, said he was doubtful of the suit. He noted in a ruling that the Public Interest Legal Foundation was asking the court to accept its findings that dead people were on the voter rolls, but said, "We cannot and will not take the plaintiff's word for it. In an election where every vote matters, we will not disenfranchise potentially eligible voters based solely on the allegations of a private foundation." Okay, here it is. This is the actual lawsuit that was filed. It's interesting because they go a lot further than what this article... So, discussion section. As a threshold matter, we find that plaintiff seeks a mandatory injunction and will apply the applicable heightened standard. Were we to grant plaintiff its requested preliminary relief, the status quo in the case would be irreparably altered. If the allegedly deceased individuals are removed, but are in fact alive, they cannot vote in the 2020 election. There would be nothing we could do to alleviate that fact from at trial on the merits. Furthermore, plaintiff's proffered relief would require defendant to take the positive act of actively removing registered voters from voter rolls. Thus, plaintiff must bear the particularly heavy burden of demonstrating a right to relief that is indisputably clear. Plaintiff's claims implicates both the National Voter Registration Act and Pennsylvania State Law Section 8 of the NVRA, requires election officials to conduct a general program that makes a reasonable effort to remove the names of ineligible voters from the official list of eligible voters by reason of the death of the registrant. While election officials are required to remove any ineligible voters from official lists no later than 90 days before the date of the general election, the removal of deceased registered voters is exempt from this requirement. Thus, deceased registered voters may be removed from the voter rolls at any time. The Secretary of the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania, is the chief election official of Pennsylvania and is responsible for the coordination of the Commonwealth's responsibilities under the NVRA. Pennsylvania state law also mandates the removal of voter rolls of any elector who has been reported deceased by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. DOH is required to report the appropriate county commission the death of any Pennsylvania 18 years or older within 60 days of receiving notice of the individual's death. Individual counties are then directed to cancel the registration of deceased electors. Pennsylvania's voter registration system, called SURE, is designated to allow the election officials to add, modify, and delete information in the system and as is necessary and appropriate. All county election commissions are connected electronically to SURE and are required to maintain the registration records in the system 25 PA constat. Plaintiff does not allege that this program itself is deficient, nor does it point to a specific breakdown that makes the program unreasonable. Instead, plaintiff argues that the sheer number of allegedly deceased registered voters it has uncovered is a hallmark of an unreasonable list maintenance program. We disagree. Approximately 130,000 Pennsylvanians die every year. This means that even assuming all 22,000 apparently deceased individuals died in the same year, a maximum of 17% of deceased registered voters have not been removed from the voter rolls. As plaintiff counsel acknowledged at yesterday's hearing, the NVRA does not require perfection, nor shall we. Without allegation, let alone proof, of a specific breakdown in Pennsylvania's voter registration system, we cannot find that the many procedures currently in place are unreasonable. Pennsylvania law requires the Department of Health, the department which issues death certificates, to promptly notify local election commissions that an adult Pennsylvanian has died. County commissioners are then required to cancel the registrations. In furtherance of that goal, defendant has maintained the SURE system, which allows election officials to add, modify, and delete information in the system as is necessary and appropriate. Defendant provides proof that she has done just that. 91,424 deceased voters were removed in 2018, 95,670 in 2019. Because plaintiff does not provide factual support from which we could find otherwise, it has not carried its heightened burden of showing that success on the merits is indisputably clear. Furthermore, we note that the plaintiff's proffered list of 21,206 allegedly deceased registered voters does not tell the whole story. As noted by defense counsel at yesterday's hearing, the initially proffered 9,300 deceased registered voters, approximately 5,000 did not appear on plaintiff's September or October lists. To be sure, this could be the result of a number of factors, including inadequacies in plaintiff's data mining procedures, but it is also possible that this change was the result of state and county efforts to remove ineligible voters. Defense counsel candidly acknowledged that he could not attribute the entirety of the 5,000 voter discrepancy to state removal efforts. Nevertheless, we find that the facts weigh in favor of the reasonableness of the state's list maintenance program. It is hard to believe that such a large disparity could be a result of a mistake. Instead, absent evidence from the moving party indicating otherwise, we find this change leans in favor of the state's efforts to update voter rolls with the latest data on voter eligibility, balancing the equities of public interest. Plaintiff argues that the public has great interest in ensuring free and fair elections. This is without question, but the public also has a great interest in safeguarding the right of every eligible registered voter to make their voices heard in a national election. As previously noted, plaintiff proffers a list of 21,206 individuals who are apparently dead, quotation marks. We have no reason to assume that plaintiff did not make every effort to ensure the veracity of this list. But even assuming the highest quality control standards were in place in the creation of plaintiff's list, we will not allow a private foundation to dictate the voter eligibility of thousands of Pennsylvania voters. Defendant has every right to verify this list before disenfranchising potentially eligible voters. By their own admission, plaintiff utilized the full names and birth dates of registrants compared to the Social Security Death Index, various commercial databases, and public obituaries. Glaringly, however, plaintiffs has provided only one completely individualized data point for their allegedly deceased individuals: voter registration numbers. Plaintiff also provided the birth and death dates, and in some cases provided a county, but this information could easily be identical across multiple individuals. Plaintiff did not provide middle initials, city of residence, voter affiliation, social security numbers, or driver's license numbers. We are not convinced that defendant would be able to verify plaintiff's list without more, let alone do so before the election. These data points are integral to ensuring the proper voters are removed from the rolls, and their exclusion results in a slower, less efficient verification process. And most importantly, it should be noted that efficiency is of the essence in this case. As of the date of this writing, the 2020 national election is but 2 weeks away. Pennsylvania's deadline to begin printing initial voter rolls was yesterday. Plaintiff had reason to believe that deceased individuals were on Pennsylvania's voter rolls as early as May 2020. It nonetheless waited until the 11th hour to file this suit, all but ensuring the defendant and the court would have to accept plaintiff's list as true in crafting the appropriate order to cleanse the rolls. Neither the court nor the defendant have the capacity to timely verify plaintiff's allegation of over 21,000 deceased individuals, that over 21,000 deceased individuals remain on Pennsylvania's voter rolls, or that the names of those individuals are accurate. Tellingly, plaintiff itself spent months compiling this list. It strains credulity to think that defendant could do the same work in less than 2 weeks. We decline to cast aspirations or to speculate on the plaintiff's motives in delaying their filing, but we also decline to order the defendant to engage in mass purging of its voter rolls based solely on the plaintiff's uncorroborated and untimely list of purportedly ineligible voters. Plaintiff's decision to file its motion days before the state began printing its rolls does not affect this balance, and we decline to order such drastic action simply because plaintiff elected to file its suit on the eve of the national election. We further find that the relief sought in this case would actively harm defendant's interests. Defendant is tasked with ensuring that all eligible registered voters can vote in free and fair election. Mass purging of voters at this late hour without verification would cut directly against this interest. Indeed, the Supreme Court has urged against such drastic last-minute changes, while plaintiff argues that its requested relief would not run afoul of the Purcell principle. It is patently not the case. Plaintiff's requested relief would require the defendant to remove allegedly deceased voters, a task exclusively within the purview of the county election officials to date. Ostensibly, the Pennsylvania legislature thought county officials were in the best position to verify the identity of the deceased individuals and remove them accordingly. Plaintiff now asks us to overhaul this procedure at the last minute without notice to county officials or to individual voters. Such an act would undoubtedly cause voter confusion at the polls, and with national election quickly approaching, we decline to take this risk. So, now that we've dug deeper into this internet rumor that spread about 21,000 dead Pennsylvanians voting, these are registered voters that a private organization has claimed are dead. They claimed it at the last minute, and they claimed it at the last minute knowing that the Pennsylvania election officials would not be able to verify whether or not these people were actually dead before doing the purging. So the court ruled against it because this claim, they didn't even provide all the information. They made this claim at the 11th hour, like the judge said, and they did that knowing that if they were to win the court case, that the election officials would have to purge all of those names on their word, and that would affect the results of the election. That's why the court ruled against them, and Pennsylvania did not have to purge these people. This 21,206 claim has not been verified, and so we don't know if any of these people are dead or alive. But judging from how shady this lawsuit is, it's unlikely that these people are dead.
Darkness at this point. 21,000 dead people in like one state. Well, that's amazing. It's amazing how Joe Biden can literally get the dead out of the graves. That's how popular he is, folks. They love him. They're voting from the afterlife. The Utah General Attorney has decided that the election process was compromised and has taken personal leave to help the Trump campaign. There was also a retired Air Force general who is talking about this with Steve Bannon. I assume I'm allowed to play what he said here.
Well, it's still up and running, Steve. I'm sorry to say. Last night, one of the outlets, the DNC, for instance, has been using this tool, and it has not yet been taken down. Just for our listeners to refreshen them, that the Hammer is a surveillance tool, as you mentioned, that the Obama administration, 2 weeks after they took over, put it into another location and started using it politically against their enemies. And then they modified it with this software package that changes the votes. The software package, like on your iPhone, is called Scorecard. And the fact is, a scorecard is what they're going to try to change your vote. So it doesn't matter what the poll watchers are doing. That is another tool they're using with poll watchers and the bogus votes of dead people that they're mailing in.
So not people who are just fringe lunatics who have never seen anything important in their lives, just a retired Air Force general. Again.
Wait. That guy sounded crazy. He was... Okay. So, this is Snopes. Is there a hammer and scorecard operation to manipulate vote counts? No, there isn't. Claim a supercomputer called Hammer and a software program called Scorecard are being used to alter vote counts in the U.S. presidential election of 2020. The director of CISA has dismissed the claims about Hammer and Scorecard altering vote counts, and these rumors originate with a man who has a long history of making deceptive claims. Still, social media users quickly found evidence, quotation marks, that Hammer and Scorecard was real and that it was truly being used to steal the 2020 election. In November 2020, a video started to circulate on social media that supposedly showed Scorecard working in real time. Let's see, Hammer and Scorecard switched 19,958 votes live on TV from Trump to Biden in the Pennsylvania presidential race. Okay, the above displayed video shows a genuine clip from CNN. However, it is not evidence of wrongdoing. In fact, what this video shows isn't even very unusual. CNN, like most news networks, use data from the National Election Poll to provide real-time results during their coverage. The above displayed video shows a momentary error in the real-time results. A source from CNN told us that this video showed a brief moment when the results were incorrectly transposed from the NAP and that this human error was caught, flagged, and quickly fixed. So what they're doing is they're typing in manually. Some guy's typing in manually and he screwed up. I mean, it happens. CISA Director Krebs' message about the Hammer Scorecard rumors bears repeating. Robust safeguards, including canvassing and auditing procedures, help ensure the accuracy of official election results, and that it is not true that a bad actor could change the election results without detection. Also, the Air Force has nothing to do with information technology. Most people are technologically illiterate. Why would you trust some random guy like this?
Again, whether you find these people credible or not, that's up to you to decide. For me, the leash king having all of these red flags surrounding his campaign is more than enough. Now, people will think, well, hang on a second. this can't be possible. Well, it can be. This happened in Britain in 2005, where they found a warehouse that was an electoral fraud factory. Because it turns out that people who are deeply invested in a particular cause, naturally this was for the Labour Party. And again, I have to stress, this always goes...
So now he's using evidence of fraud in England that was caught as proof of evidence of fraud in America. I'm just going to skip this. I don't care about English fraud.
There haven't been people who haven't been convicted and fined for this. This is a South Philadelphia judge of elections who admits he took bribes to stuff the ballot box of Democratic candidates. This was from May 2020. So, a former judge of elections and Democratic committee person from South Philadelphia has pleaded guilty to accepting thousands of dollars in bribes to inflate the vote totals for 3 Democratic candidates for common pleas court judge in 2015 and for other candidates in office 2014 and 2016. Okay, that's concerning, isn't it? That is indicative of what we might call the most extensive voter fraud organization in history. I mean, just...
How? So I have the case pulled up. There's one guy who admitted to committing election fraud. So Dominic J. DeMuro pleaded guilty to conspiracy to deprive Philadelphia voters of their civil rights by fraudulently stuffing the ballot boxes for the judicial candidates and for other candidates seeking office in 2014 and 2016 primary elections. DeMuro could not be reached for comment, but was paid between $300,000 and $5,000 for each election, the office said. Okay, here's what he did. In May 2014, DeMuro inflated vote totals by adding 27 fraudulent ballots in the primary election, 40 votes in the May 2015, and 46 votes in 2016, according to court documents outlining the scheme and the charges against him. So this guy committed minor fraud, was caught. That is no evidence of widespread, the largest fraud organization in history. It's one guy who was caught and he voted 100 times, spread out into 3 years. Still a problem, but he was caught. He was caught. He's going to jail.
Just really sounds like it. If a guy has actually been charged for this, he has been caught doing it and he has been fined between $300,000 and $5,000 for each.
He was paid between $300,000 and $5,000 for each election.
Misread we can say that voter fraud.
How do you misread something like that?
Definitely goes on. I mean, it's not like we don't have evidence of it happening. So it's definitely a concern. And it's just the idea, again, that there's no evidence is nonsense. It's a lie. It is the media's cope and denial of reality like this.
The irony of this guy not doing any research and then making claims like this.
There's so much that we've gone through. These are more counting problems. GoFundMe deplatformed a voter fraud investigation effort involving cross-checking voter records after it raised $220,000. Why? Why would that happen? Why would they...
Okay. I think this is the last one. GoFundMe pulls viral campaign that promised to uncover voter fraud without evidence of voter fraud. The election crowdfunding company GoFundMe removed a viral campaign which could be read to imply the existence of widespread voter fraud Friday, placing itself firmly in the role of attempting to dispel election misinformation. So this fraud sounds like it's a scam in order to try to disenfranchise legal voters by a guy named Matt Brainard. Matt Brainard, according to Brainard's Twitter bio, he is executive director of Look Ahead America, a nonprofit focused on rooting out alleged fraudulent votes. He is also a former Trump campaign aide. The bio lists a website for the organization, lookaheadamerica.org, which when clicks leads to an error page. So why did GoFundMe cancel his campaign? Brynard disagreed with GoFundMe's characterization of his fundraiser over the phone. When pressed as to whether he believes the wording of his now-removed campaign implied the existence of widespread voter fraud, he defended the campaign. "I'm suggesting there may be voter fraud," he said. So yes, when you refuse to answer a question and you're saying things like this, you're spreading misinformation. We followed up with GoFundMe, asking its spokesperson what specific aspect of Brynard's campaign violated the terms of service. The spokesperson responded that the campaign violated Term 3, user content or campaigns that are fraudulent, misleading, inaccurate, dishonest, or impossible reads the specific element of the TOS. This is his new campaign, by the way. It raised almost $500,000. Good for him. I'm assuming that he's going to spend all the money on himself. Most of these campaigns end up like that, by the way. So if you spend money on him, well, good for him, I suppose.
They let them waste their money, GoFundMe, unless you think they're gonna find evidence of massive.
No, GoFundMe doesn't have to do anything. They're a private organization. This guy, God.
Voter fraud that, of course, doesn't favor the left and favors the right, and you happen to be left-leaning and believe that the ends justify the means. I don't know. I don't see what other reason you could have. They've, in fact, got a long history. Voter fraud organization, again, large number of invalid votes. Oh yeah, we've had that. Which one was it? Sorry, I've got so much hits. Chris Wallace.
This is the end of this video. I think the rest of it is just memes. But everything, all the claims that he's made have been disproven.
Freedom doesn't begin or end with elections. Go to any American town, to take just an example, and you will see dozens of churches representing many different beliefs, in many places synagogues and mosques, and you will see families of every conceivable nationality worshiping together. Go into any schoolroom, and there you will see children being taught the Declaration of Independence, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that no government can justly deny. The guarantees in their Constitution for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion go into any courtroom, and there will preside an independent judge, beholden to no government power. There, every defendant has the right to a trial by a jury of his peers, usually 12 men and women, common citizens. They are the only ones who weigh the evidence and decide on guilt or innocence. In that court, the accused is innocent until proven guilty, and the word of a policeman or any official has no greater legal standing than the word of the accused. Go to any university campus, and there you'll find an open, sometimes heated discussion of the problems in American society and what can be done to correct them.